we're going to be showing you how to set up and install one of what we call our MasterTailor lines. The idea behind MasterTailor is that we take standard design components and we tailor them to your specific needs. Whether it's a specific base structure, a certain depth, super shallow, super deep, super wide, any sort of curvature you need, we tailor to your exact specifications. That way you don't have to spend any money on any components you don't need. Get the exact product you need for the right price. Assembling your MasterTailor console couldn't be easier. You literally follow the numbers. Every component that makes up a MasterTailor console has an engraved number in it, from 1 to 99. All you have to do is start with number 1 and add the numbers as you go from there. And we'll show you that in a little bit, how they're engraved and where you can find the engravings. But we're going to start with our base structure like we do with all of our consoles. We'll assemble our base structure, we'll add our countertops, and then we're going to add our turrets, countertop extensions, and accessories. For this console that we're going to be assembling, we're going to start with base structure number 1, which is, as you will see, a base structure that has engravings of number 1 on it. We're then going to find our Modesty panels that will be engraved with numbers 2 and 3, as well as our next leg that's going to be engraved with the number 4 on it. All of the Modesty panels and legs attach using the same pan head screws we use to attach countertops, which you can find in the hardware bag provided with your shipment. I recommend using an extended tip for your screw drive because it'll make getting the screws in a little bit easier. So we're going to be using the pan head screws that were in the hardware bag marked Modesty to cabinet. Once we have our pan head screws, we can take our Modesty and we're going to hold our Modesty up against the base cabinet so that the holes line up. We're going to line up our first screw through the top hole, and then we're going to simply align it with the pre-drilled holes in the cabinet. Once we have our first screw in just a little bit, we can start with the rest of our screws to tighten it down. Now that we have our rear Modesty installed, we can install our front Modesty, which is going to be number 3. Again, we start our screw tip. We start into the first hole. Line our L bracket up with our pre-drilled holes and put in our first screw. Now we're ready to install part number 4, which is going to be a leg. Now to install our leg, we're going to be using the screws that we found in our hardware bag that were labeled Modesty to leg. They're pan heads, but a little bit shorter. So to install our leg, all we want to do is we can lean this leg up against ours, take our screw tip, and line it up through the L bracket. Once we have our first screw through, we line it up with the leg. You may need to lift up the Modesty panel a little bit to get it in, and once you do, put down your first screw, and then move on to your rear Modesty. We're going to do the rear Modesty first, and then we'll put the rest of our screws in. So you just line up your holes, put your screw in, and now you can begin putting in the rest of your screws. So we started this console with a base cabinet, but sometimes there are no base cabinets, and if you're working solo, installing long Modesties can be a bit of a challenge. So what we're going to show you now is a quick trick that you can use to make your assembly go even easier. So what you want to do is you want to start with the leg you're going to be working on. We're then going to take that leg and we can lay it down on the ground. We then take our Modesty panel and we can line the holes up this way. So take your Modesty panel, set your screw, and put your first screw in. By installing your Modesties this way, it allows you to lift it up at the end, allowing you to do this solo, which frequently will be the case. Now that we have our Modesty panels installed, we can get our screws to go into this. All we have to do is take our Modesties and leg and tip them up like so. And now we can install them on our own. Take your screw, line it through the L bracket, and line it up with the pre-drilled holes. There we go. The first one's always the hardest. Once the first one's in, the rest of them go in very easily. So again, we line up our L bracket with our pre-drilled holes, and just tighten down. Now that we have parts 1 through 7 installed, we're going to move on to 8 and 9, which are going to be another set of Modesty panels, and then finally 10, which is going to be our end panel. Now our right end panel is going to be a little bit different. Because our right end panel is going through a base cabinet, it actually bolts using hex bolts. And to put those in, we're going to be using either a socket wrench or a bolt driver on a drill. So the first thing we want to do is line up our end panel and hand tighten our hex bolts. So you can see on our end panel, we have these pre-threaded inserts. We're just going to line these up with the through bolts coming out of the cabinet. So we take our hex bolt through the first hole and line it up with our insert. And there we go. And now that we have our hex bolts hand tight, we can use our bolt driver, put them in the rest of the way. And you don't need to screw them down too hard, just make them snug. And now your base structure is complete. Now we can move on to countertops and turrets.